Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today we are celebrating that we are now over 100 subscribers. This is absolutely fantastic. I am honestly blown away. I can't thank you guys enough for watching these videos and subscribing. It means a hell of a lot to me. So today we are going to do something a little bit special to celebrate. We're going to pull in the green Mark II Robin that we have, and we are going to see if we can get the car to fire up or run. Hopefully we can get it to fire up, but the car has not fired up in over 10 years. So it's going to be interesting to see if we can get it to fire up today. But before we do that, let's get out there, get the jet wash hooked up and give this car the clean that she so deserves, which would be her first clean in over 10 years. So let's get out and let's get cracking. Lovely this paint colour would have been, but after a quick wash doesn't look too bad. So we've just finished jet washing the Mark II now. As you can see, it's just there in the back. Let's have a quick look around it and see how it's come out compared to what it was originally, which was pretty damn bad. So as you can see, it's come out a lot better than it did. A lot better, but if you have a look, you can kind of see in the reflection there's still a lot of dirt stuck in the paint there. Might be able to buff that out at the end, but we shall see. The windows have come out a treat. Like I said, a lot better than it was. You can see how bad the paint is, all the roof, and well, basically all the top of the car. All the lacquer's gone completely. The paint's pretty screwed up, to be honest, but it's still looking better than it did do. But at least now this gives us some sort of a platform to work with. But one of the jobs that we will be doing, as you can see, the front end of the car where the airflow is, has obviously been cut out previously. So that is one job I will do, which is basically fiberglassing that back in and go from there. When I had the car, the previous owner did say that this car did used to drive okay, and then the engine suddenly stopped and he parked it up and didn't bother with it. Hopefully nothing too big and catastrophic has gone on with the engine. If we can get it to run, we know we're on a solid. Let's get on it and try and get this old girl to fire into life once again. So the first job I want to see is their power to the battery. Now, as you can see, it's not too bad in here. I have seen a lot worse. So let's just hook negative onto the battery, and then let's just turn the key and just see if we've got electronic power. Right, so let's turn the key. We have got a battery light. Okay, so by the sounds of that, I'd say it might be a sticky starter motor. I think I've got good spare starter motor for one of these, the later type. So let's rip this one off and then put the other starter motor I've got on to see if we can get the engine spinning over. Okay. I see one right at the back there. Now the bolts on your starter motor are usually a 14mm spanner size. So you can either use your ring, or you could use a bit of a ratchet ring as well, whichever one you prefer. But we're gonna take off this starter motor now, swap it over with the other one I've got, and hopefully we'll get a good turn of the engine while we turn the key. So the first thing to do to take your starter motor off is, of course, you'll have to disconnect the wiring first. Now the wires on the later type, you have 3 wires. So you'll have the big red one coming into the top, and then usually, get that out of the way, you'll have another 2 wires coming down, and then one that side and one on the bottom. Now usually these have 2 different clips on them, different sizes, so you can't really get them backwards, so they only really fit on one way unless someone has put a new connector on at some point in its life. Once your wires are taken off, then it's only held on by 2 bolts. With the later types, these are threaded inside the gearbox, whereas on the early types, they are usually nut and bolted, so you'll have a nut behind and then the bolt at the front going through. So with these being threaded into the gearbox, it's just a case of a 14mm spanner or ratchet, and then you just back out the bolts on each side. Now I find, because they are quite weighty, they're quite heavy, I prefer to take the bottom one off first and then I'll work to the top one, because if you do the top one first and then start undoing the bottom, you'll notice that the starter motor will actually try and fall out of position, which of course will make it more awkward for you trying to get the bottom bolt out. So that's why I kind of work from bottom to top on this. Now to unbolt the live wire that comes down into the starter motor, you can use the 1/2" spanner, or of course the equivalent 13mm spanner. I work a lot in the mill side of stuff, so I'm just going to use a 13mm, and it's just a simple case of break it loose like so. Okay, so there is just the simple brass nut, and then you'll be followed by a couple of washers. Just move them out of the way, and then your live wire is off. Now it's very important when you're at this stage, don't let that live wire touch your engine because it'll arc. Okay, well this one either has a very, very dead battery or a very bad earth. So if that wire was to sit on top of there, usually it'd go and there'll be sparks everywhere. So make sure, it is vital that that is moved out of the way of the engine when you're doing this. Now here you can see the wires, so they just simply pull apart, and I will show you what I mean about they have different ends. So as this one is quite a wide spade fitting, and this one is rather narrow. You might not be able to say, to tell on camera. They are completely different sizes, so it is tricky to get them mixed up unless someone's done it before. Okay, so now that bit's done, I'm going to go underneath the car and get the bottom bolt out. Right, so I've just done the bottom one off camera because it was just more convenient and easier for me. There we go, she's give. Okay, so with that being done, now the starter motor should just pull out, but this one been on for a while. Oh, there you go. Yep, she just fell out, and then you just pull it out like that, and your starter motor's off. Doesn't look the best, I've got to admit. So that's the other starter motor all just fitted and wired in. It goes on the exact same way as it comes off. The only thing different is when I put one on, I'll usually put the top bolt in first, just to stop the starter motor from falling backwards again. And then once you've got the top one in, then you can screw the bottom one in and then tighten them both equally. And then it's just a case of put your wires on like that. So on this case it'd be white and red to the back, the yellow one to the bottom, and then obviously your big fat red one will go onto that one there, and away you go. So have we got any battery left? No, we haven't. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to take the other battery I've got on charge over there, link it onto this one, and see if we can just get a bit of power through, turn the key, and hopefully we'll see if the engine will turn over. Now if the engine's solid, we've got an issue. However, if the engine's free, then we're happy. Now there is another way you can do this. You can just put a 14mm spanner on the crank pulley on the engine and give that a turn, and that'll let you know if the engine's turning or not. But I want to do it the fun way, so I'm going to use a starter motor. The previous owner says that the engine still turns over, which is why I'm not too funny about it. But I just want to see if it'll fire up on the button. So let's get the other battery on, let's have a look, eh? Moment of truth. Do we have power? And will it turn over? Let's have a look. So, do we have power? Oh wow, the interior light works. Amazing. So that should mean we have power. Ooh. So does it turn over? Let's see. Yeah, of course it does. So we know the engine turns. That's nice. There was no knocks or clunks. I think it's just the battery's a bit dead. But that is a great thing. We're going to do other checks now. We're just going to check the oil. The fuel has been sat for a long time, so I don't imagine it'll fire up on the fuel that's left in it. You never know. So we're just going to check the oil, make sure the engine's got oil in. We'll probably check if the spark plugs are getting spark, and then just go from there, really. I mean, you only need fuel, air, spark, and compression, obviously. Yeah, so let's get that sorted. Let's check the oil feed now. Right then, chaps. So to check for oil on these engines, if you don't know already, the dipstick will be located right below my finger down here. So it's like a little plastic T-shape thing. So pull that out. There's your dipstick. Oh yeah, we've got loads of oil on that. Just give that a quick wipe. Drop that back in. Oh yeah, we have loads of oil in there. A bit black, but we have loads of oil. So that's good. At least we know this engine is oiled. The dashpot feels good. The carb's not sticking. No, it actually feels all relatively good. I wonder if this fires up. There is already a spark plug down here. So I'm going to see if I can just move that about there. Wonder if we get a spark from it. Okay, I can't see a spark from that, but the engine is turning over low. And to be honest with you, I don't really like the look of these HT leads that go into the plugs, so I might swap them out anyway. But what I am going to do, I am going to take the distributor out and give that a look inside, because the odds are the points have gone manky, the condenser's probably gone manky, so I will check that. Yeah, so I'm going to just take these HT leads off because these do not look great at all. As you can probably see, these don't look fantastic whatsoever. They are being slung. I'm going to pull every single one off because none of them look or feel very good. In fact, they all feel like they're about 30 years old. And the distributor is loose. Oh yeah, look, these are all taped up. Don't know if these are any good, any of these. I mean, the king leads fell apart, so that probably doesn't help. And the coils just fell out. Okay, so I'm just gonna pop the distributor off. Well, pop the distributor cap off. And I just want to see what the internals of that is looking like. Okay, so the cap doesn't actually look all that bad. Not bad at all, a bit of fluff there. But all things considered, that doesn't look a bad cap whatsoever. So we'll keep that. But what I do want to look at is the distributor itself. So the distributor is loose, which doesn't help. The main plate that it sits on is a little bit loose, but not too bad. Now, the points are closed at the minute, so turn the car on, and I'm just going to check for a spark, just to see if the coil is sending power. Okay, so there, you can see there's a spark, so I know that the points are getting power. However, I don't like how this is set up, so I'm going to take the distributor out and just quickly chuck some more points and another condenser on and get it set up so it's ready to rock and roll. Okay, so this is the video that most of you out there have been asking for, and from what I've heard on the forums, most people need. So what we're going to do right now is we are going to not completely disassemble the entire distributor, but we are going to strip all the points, the condenser, the rotor arm, and then take the top plate off, check the weights inside, and then build it back up and set it ready for going in the car. So first, to take these apart, you're going to want to take the rotor arm off. Now you might see on the rotor arm there that that brass bit is a bit worn, there's movement in it. So this we're going to bin, because as this spins round inside here, centrifugal force is going to take over and it's going to pull that brass bit slightly out, which will probably, because there's only a small gap between the little brass points in the cap and this might touch and might end up breaking the cap. It looks like it's a bit worn from that anyway, so we're going to sling that. I've got many of them in anyway, so we're going to replace that. And I don't quite like the way this has all been put together, so it's a good job we're taking it out. So this particular distributor is running blue points. However, when you run blue points, there's usually a little locator pin that sits around here, and this little white fork on the bottom of the points sit inside it. That is not here, so maybe the wrong points, but let's pop this out and have a look. Now there is usually an extra wire that goes onto your condenser. Now all that is just an extra earth, so that grounds the condenser directly to the distributor body. So even though when you screw it down there, it technically grounds it to the body anyway, this is just like a secondary, so kind of like a fail-safe if you wish. So we're going to keep that safe, because you don't want to lose these screws, because finding the right ones are a pain in the backside. And it's vital that you have these the same length, the correct length, because if they're too long, as you screw them down, they'll actually push through underneath the plate and then press against the plate that's underneath it, which will stop the point plate from spinning. Now you need that spin, it's called a vacuum advance, and that is what this little guy does. So we'll remove these. From taking this off, I can already see that the typical pin is broken. So this little guy here, this little pin should probably sit up to about this height. Now that is what, on the blue points anyway, that's what this little fork, let me pull it out, that's what that little fork sits on. And that's to stop this from wiggling around. So you might not need it for it to run, but if it's there, I'd prefer it to be there. And as you can see, this top plate is very rocky anyway, so this is heavily worn. What that'll do is, because this spins round, opens your points, closes your points, if this plate has got any wiggle or movement on it, your points will start moving and rattling around, and this will give you inconsistent points gap, and it will also, ever so slightly, but it will also move your ignition timing ever so slightly. You might not notice it, but it does make a hell of a difference. So that's very important. So we're going to take this plate off and replace that. I think I have a couple of them knocking around. So we're going to take that plate off and remove that. If these screws come off, these can be a nightmare when they are worn, but a bit of persistence like that and they unscrew. Just like so. And that is all that wire is attached to. Literally just ground to ground. This plate should now just pop out, just like so, and that is your top plate. If I just undo that, if you look inside there, They are your little bob weights. Now, as centrifugal force spins, these weights actually move outwards, which in turn will slightly alter your ignition timing. Now this is called your centrifugal advance. And then you also have this little guy here. This is called your vacuum pot, or your vacuum advance pot. Now what this does, this little hose goes up to the back of your carburetor, takes a vacuum off your carb. What it will do is, as the vacuum gets higher, usually at a lower RPM, it will then suck this diaphragm this way, and then this little arm will be pulled inwards, which on this side, where is it, that little arm will move like that. So that's called your vacuum advance. So again, once the vacuum gets greater, ignition timing advances. So that's why that's important. If you're feeling like your fuel economy on your car has gone down, it feels like you have to use more throttle while you're just cruising at a steady, say 50 mile an hour, then the odds are your vacuum advance, either the pipe has fell off, or the little pot seized up, or maybe even your plate has seized up and it's not turning. But as for looking inside of there, I am happy with what I'm seeing. The springs look good, the weights look good, they're going out and springing back, they're not, the shaft isn't loose, the weights aren't loose, so I'm happy with that. So all we're going to do is we're going to change this plate and then chuck some new points on there, and then we shall see then if she'll fire up, if she'll spark anyway. Let's have a look. Loads of goodies. So now we just have to find a plate that will fit. Ah, there's one. There you go. So as you can see, that's that little pin I was on about that holds the points together, and then obviously you've got one underneath for your vacuum advance. So let's get that banged on it. When it comes to putting these plates back on, you want to make sure that that pin will sit in the little hole on that plate there, which can be a bit of a faff. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of jiggling, and just like that it'll slot straight in. So I'm happy with that. And now you just want to tighten in your retaining bolts or screws. Also, it is very important to make sure you do not drop anything inside the distributor. If you do, then you need to take the plate off and get whatever it is you've dropped in there out, because the last thing you need is that be flying around inside under high RPM, because I've seen it happen. It does make a lot of mess and you do destroy your distributor. Okay, so I have quite a few bits knocking around. Oh look, I've got a brand spanking new blue points, so I'll put the brand new ones on. Now I don't seem to have any brand new condensers, but I think one of these should do the job. We'll go with this one. Now when you are putting your new points and condensers in, usually you'll get them separately, so you have to put your condensers onto your points. Now your condensers will fit just here on this little, you can see this little ridge, that's where your condensers will hook onto. Now you can fit these on either way, but I'll show you how I do it. So you'll see these here, you'll have one side where the wires go in and the other side will be flat. Now what I do is I put the flat on the point side, because I've seen it where people do it this way and then they get bent over, and then these will ground out onto this points plate, which will stop any spark. So you might be looking at coils and all this other wiring, when all fact it was just you put that on wrong. So I'll put these on that way around and then just give them a bit of a pull in like this, and there you go. And then you just hook that back over, sit in the plastic there, and you see how they do not touch this plate, whereas if they were the other way around they'll be closer. So you just keep that in mind. So with the blue points, what you do is you'll turn your fork, you might just need to lift that around just like that. So you want your white fork facing that way. So when you put your points in, make sure there's a little locating pin, make sure that'll line up with that corresponding hole. And then make sure that that pin fits in that fork and it all slots down beautifully. And then don't forget, make sure that you put your wire through. So the little hole in the side, you just pop your wire through like that. Lovely. And then your condenser, you just sit that in the little square, and then the hole's there for you to tighten it all up with. So you put your screw in your little ground wire first, and then it can be a bit of a faff. If it's your first time doing it, expect to drop your screw, but practice makes perfect at the end of the day, chaps. So then you tighten your condenser, and now it comes to setting your points. Okay, so when it comes to setting up your points now, what you do is, obviously you want to make sure they're in line, pop your little screw in. So once your little screw is in, you just want to tighten that, not all the way, just nip it, just where you can still move your points. Now what you want, you'll see on this shaft, you'll see like 4 rounded corners to it. Now what you want is, you want to set it, so setting it something like this in a vise is perfect to do this. So you just want to set this right where it contacts the plastic part of the points there. You want that on its highest setting on the lobe. And then where you can go from there is you can start moving this out, and you can see how that adjusts the points gap. Like that. You want to set it at, I believe it was about 15 thousandths of an inch. I can't remember exactly because I do it this way. Whereas if you are a smoker like myself, use some Resla packets or just a thin piece of card, and then I usually fold that in half and then just sit them inside the points, just like so. And then I will just gently nip it up from there. And you want it where it's just gripping card. You see how I can still move that with my fingers quite easily, so it's not gripping it too tight. Now that is a good points gap. You probably could get closer, actually, in all fairness, but it's not a bad points gap there. And you see how I can move that load from side to side and the points don't open? That is what you want. And then right at the lobe, it opens up. And that I'd be happy with. I mean, you could even go a bit closer than that if you wanted to. But I'm happy enough with that. That will get the car to run. And of course, I don't want to forget, I want to put the other rotor, fresh rotor arm that I've got knocking around. I want to pop that on there as well. So now your distributor is set correctly and ready to install on the car. So now we're going to whack this onto the engine and then see if we can get a spark to the spark plugs. Just want to mention, I've said it before but I'll say it again, when it comes to putting your distributor back in the engine, you'll put it on, you'll notice you have loads of movement. Now it's hard to show you in here, but your distributor, unless you're very lucky, your distributor will not sit right first time. Now the easy trick for that, once you put your distributor in, you turn the rotor arm and you listen for a click like that, you see? So take the distributor out again. Right, so the distributor's loose, so you get the distributor in, but there's still a gap underneath. Now you gently push down and then turn your rotor arm and it'll click and drop in place like that. So when you can't twist that rotor arm all the way around, you know that that is now seated, and now you can go ahead and bolt it down to your engine. Okay, so now that's in, we're just going to test if we have good spark. Yes, we have good spark. pop some old but better leads on. I'm just going to test if we've got good spark coming from the coil. Yep, we have brilliant spark from there. Okay, so it's very important that your firing order is 1, 3, 4 and 2. Obviously the middle one goes to your coil, that's your king lead. Distributor slightly loose, but I've got it timed pretty much in line with 1 to 1. So plug lead 1 going to plug number 1. And that is pretty much the original timing. And I have, off camera, I have turned the crank over and just checked the position of the rotor arm, and it was pointing to that. So now is the exciting part. Will it fire up? Let's do it together. Let's see if we can get this to fire up. Bit of easy start. I've disconnected the fuel line because I don't want it filling up with all old fuel. Bit of easy start down the throat. Will it fire up? Let's see, bit of choke. That was a fire. That was a fire up. We'll just give that a quick minute. Let the battery charge a little bit more, because this battery is crap. So just give that a minute and we'll try that again. But that ran. Ah, I'm so excited. That ran. That fired. Let's give it another shot. How about that? Let's try it. Bit of choke. Battery's dead. Well, we didn't quite get the car to run on its own, but this is still a win, because at least we know that this engine has got some life left in it. But that brings us to the end of this video. If you've liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and please, please, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Let me know down in the comments if this video has been useful for you. And if you enjoy watching these videos of me bringing these cars back to the road and giving another chance of life, stay tuned for the next video, which will be part 2 of the work for the Mark II Robin. And with that being said, folks, take it easy and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.